Hi, everybody. It's April 10th, 2025, and this is the weekly Backdrop Dev meeting. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the internet. I'm core committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. This meeting, our goal is to talk about development priorities for Backdrop Core primarily. We have some other topics to discuss today as well. We'll talk about feature freeze, and a couple of issues specifically around entities and extensibility. We've had some questions coming up in the issue queues about it. So those are our goals for today. We'll do some introductions before we get started. We've got a half dozen people here today. We'll start off with Jen, and then we'll go to Tim.
Hi, Jen Lambton joining from Oakland, California. Um, no relevant updates this week for me.
Okay, Tim, and then Eli.
Yeah, my name is Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota, and I'm excited right now about progress on the Bien module, Bien import export nodes, allowing you to move nodes from one site to another. I think I have a working version. So
Great. Thanks, Tim. Eli, and then Robert.
Hello, my name is Eli Lissick. I'm a developer with Giant Rabbit. I'm calling from San Diego, California.
Thanks, Eli. Robert, and then Ben.
I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Pasadena, California.
Great. Ben.
Hey, my name is Ben. I work at Giant Rabbit with Eli, and I'm in Asheville, North Carolina.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Let's see. We usually do some updates on our community as well. Jen, looks like you've got a couple of things in the notes
Yeah.
here.
Not quite all the way through it yet, but we do have a new showcase website for Flatbush, which I think was yours, Tim. It's from Triplo anyway. So thank you for providing that. I don't know who actually submitted the showcase, but Triplo is credited on there.
yes, and that wasn't necessarily intended to go live yet. Did it go live already?
Oh yeah, I was just
Okay.
looking at the list
If
of.
if it looks fine, don't worry about it. But I had planned to review it before my
Well, you
colleague.
gotta do it before I see it at a weekly meeting day. Otherwise, I'm likely to publish it.
No
I think it
problem.
looks great. I
Great.
did have to uh change some language to get past our spam filters, but other than that,
Okay.
I'll message
I
you.
will take a look at it. Thank you.
Great. And new projects. There's
I haven't.
oh, I got to it already. There's 4 new contrib projects since we last had a meeting. Ajax blocks HTMX integration. I think that there was a Backdrop Live session on that. Extended editor text format recipe and view sort expression. Always great to see new projects coming in. This is also our first meeting since Backdrop Live. We didn't have a meeting last week. Backdrop Live is our online conference. It's a 2-day around the world global event, and it was great. Tim, do you want to do any recap or summary? Sorry to put you on the spot here on Backdrop Live.
It's okay. I think it went really well. We have tentative dates. I won't try to say them, but yeah, no, I'm not going to try to recap. It went really well. Thanks everyone for all your contributions.
Yeah. For people that watch these meetings and know that they're recorded and watch them asynchronously, you'll find that we don't have any recordings from Backdrop Live because that's culturally not the way that the event is set up. So if you want to be a part of the discussions and hear about all the great things that we talked about at Backdrop Live, just show up at the next one.
Well, one caveat to that, we do sometimes try to repeat some of the sessions for Backdrop Live during user groups and get them recorded. We're going to do that today with one of our sessions on improving the editor experience. If there were other things that you missed at Backdrop Live but would love to participate in, let me know because we will try to schedule some of those things during user group meetings, and then they will be recorded.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. You're right. Okay. All right, so for today, we're going to jump right into question that Ben asked earlier this week. It seems to be there's a lot of discussion around it. And Ben, if it's okay, I'll call on you to summarize the problem that you're facing, and then we can kind of start trying to explore some options.
Sure, yeah, the issue, so I'm porting entity translation, which is a translation module, but unlike the backdrop core module, which I think is I18N, is that what it is? It doesn't translate the entire node, right? So it translates individual fields. And the issue that I'm running into is that 777 used to let you override some things like language and label. And that's proving to be difficult in Backdrop because the core classes for some of the entities, they just call the label method, and that doesn't have any way to hook into it or to kind of change the output of that method call. So that's kind of I think that's a pretty good summary of what's happening.
Yeah, so okay, so yeah, so if we look at hook entity info. So let's look at the example. Okay. So in hook entity info, in Drupal 7, there used to be a label callback in
Yep.
here, right? And there's not a label callback anymore as part of
Yep.
Drupal or as part of Backdrop's system. And the reason that the difference here is that I also don't think that there was an entity class in Drupal 7, right? They were just
Yeah, that
general
sounds right.
they were just general objects, standard classes. And in Backdrop, there's this new one here for entity class, which is nice that they're real objects in Backdrop. And if we just look at the node class, we've got things like, well, there's methods on it, right? Because it's a real object. And one of the things in here is that there's label. But this just returns title. And I think that this is the problem here, right? That we need
Yep.
the ability, the title is not it's not a field. And so I don't think that there's a a way to translate that within core. And now it
Yeah,
could be
the other way that I'm dealing with that is there's something called the title module, which is not really a great name for it, but it lets you translate certain properties like title. And it kind of does a bunch of workarounds to change title into a field. So there's actually a field called title field. And then it does a bunch of messes around with things a bunch in order to try to get title translated when you load the node or when you view the node.
Yeah, something that kind of surprises me, like if we look at the actual table here, so the node table, it does have lang code in here, so there's a bunch of stuff like that we have carried over from Drupal 7. The translation system is not great. Still, like the entity translation system. So I'd really love to be able to support porting this module but moreover just improving our general language capabilities in the entity system in core. And so I guess there's kind of two ways we can look at this. It's like, what can we do to make it so that the entity translate module needs to do less work so that, maybe we could fix this by, making this return the right thing or a translated version of title, like making titles support language code correctly when you've got multiple translations on a single node or other entity. Or go back to, what's missing here, this label callback. We could just straight up restore language callback to the to hook entity info.
Wait, so what's the issue? Is it that this module doesn't want to override the node class? Or
Well, there's not really a way to override the entire node class, first of
is
all.
that
Yeah.
another issue, or is that
Yes. So that is
okay?
the other issue. And oh wait, this isn't it. This is
That's mine, yeah.
yeah, let me look. I thought that I was pulling
I
that one
think
up.
it's linked in there. It's linked in
Here it
that.
is.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is
I
what
remember
this
this.
issue does.
Okay.
And so it makes it so we switch from using direct instantiations like this. So this is why the node class can't be
Mhm.
changed, is because in some places we just literally say new node. And
Yeah.
so the node class isn't like the what's in hook entity info isn't going to be respected if we don't even look in hook entity info
Yeah.
and just create a new object out of the blue like that.
So the way that Drupal was intended to work is that these things would be altered and not extended. And then sometime recently we decided we wanted to use classes, which wants it to be extended instead of altered. And so now we're sort of halfway in the middle. Is that sort of where we're at? With
Well, um, the the difference is that the Drupal 7 hook entity info with its label callback could override one tiny part of the entity system. How do I get the label? But by using an entity class instead, like you're not just replacing that one tiny little part. How do I get the label? But you're replacing the entire class and everything. I mean, extending all of it. You're replacing the entire class, which
you
does
mean
give
if
you
you
the
did an
ability.
entity info alter and switch to a different class, then
Yes.
your
Yeah.
class isn't being used anywhere because we're still calling the old class directly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's another part of
Yeah.
this.
And
Yeah,
then
just to add a little bit more to this, because so lang I mean, sorry, label is one of them, but the other issue I'm having is with the actual language callback. So Drupal had something called entity underscore language. It was a function, and modules could hook into that and return a different language code in certain cases, which is useful for the entity translation module. It's a little tricky because the entity translation module doesn't even translate the entire node, but sometimes you're loading the node in a different language, and that's when it's useful to loading or saving the node in a different language, and
and
that's
in
when it's useful to
Backdrop,
override that. In
that's a
Backdrop, it
property
got rid of,
and not a function.
yeah, right, it
right?
got rid of the entity language callback.
But it's lang code, right? And it's just a property instead.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. This we inherited from Drupal 8. It's not entirely decided upon, but yeah, it does definitely need love. Nate, I think you were talking about this last week and you had an idea about at least the
Yeah, about the label.
class.
Yeah, the label part. I already covered that part. I think that's the only
I
thing I
think you,
had an idea for.
oh, I thought you had an idea about RGPianos, like swap out the classes thing also. I don't
Well,
remember.
yeah, so let's see, RG Piano's issue here, 6075. Um, so it's been a little, I've been on the fence about this one. RG Piano's understandably frustrated because he's like, this just seems like the way that it was supposed to be, which I agree with. And the reason that I'm on the fence is that if modules do start using hook entity info alter to swap out the class, well, there's a couple of issues there. First of all, only one module will be allowed to do it. And so if entity translate does it, then another module won't be able to do it, or they won't be compatible with each other because only one's going to win.
Right.
And so it's not a very good tool to solve the problem
That's what
anyway.
I meant by like Drupal intended it to be altered and not swapped, right? Originally. And so I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
mean,
where
I think I'm partial to creating some ways for modules to hook into those rather, or to, alter those, some sort of
yeah.
hook or something, or entity info thing.
Yeah,
What-
but
I
my,
think in
my,
either case, you kind of get into that problem, right? If two modules are really messing around with the label, you're going to get into an issue. But also, overwriting an entire node class just to change the label seems like overkill to me.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
little bit.
yeah,
agree.
but what I'm really worried about here is Entity Plus module. And my concern is that Entity Plus module um may, like, for example, this problem that you're facing, like, thank you for being here and working to help us understand how to fix it. But if it were possible for Entity Plus to swap out the class, and the maintainer of Entity Plus was also working on translation systems, then it's likely that they would just swap out all of the entity classes, add a whole bunch of new methods to better support translation, and then all sites that wanted to use Entity Translate would also depend on Entity Plus. And then we could end up with a de facto core-like module in Contrib that every site would need to install. And I don't want to have that kind of, like, all sites need to install X module problem,
We
like
sort of
this,
gotten
that,
away from that everywhere else, and now we'd be like introducing it back in. Yeah, I sort of agree with like, it would be great if we could fix this problem in core without saying, oh, contrib will just figure out a way around it instead. But yeah, it is frustrating if you're just trying to do something and you're like, I just want to extend it, I can't because core doesn't support it right now. Yeah. Okay, so if we go back to the idea of like core wants to be altered, can we add a hook into that title class?
yeah,
So it would be like a
that's
node
what I'm
title holder.
suggesting is that,
Yeah.
so right now
That's
it's just getting the property and returning it. And what we can do here is, if we look at the parent class entity, I think that it even does this a couple of times. Yeah, so it gets the info of the thing to act on it in a generic way. This is great because it's actually getting the entity info and it's finding the keys, and then it's doing stuff inside of there. And so what we could do is right now uh oh, there's no let's see. Sorry, trying to find the actual. Okay, so okay, here. Okay, it's in the interface, it looks like, and I'm guessing that the entity class, yeah, it's an abstract class. Okay, so there is no label method inside of
Yeah,
here.
this
Uh,
also weirdly dovetails with another issue that I opened. Maybe it's not weird because it has to do with the title module, but Drupal also used to have inside entity info, it used to have the label key. I forget what it's called.
mhm.
And in order for this, if we did extend or change the core entity class here, we would need that label key in there in order, because taxonomy, for instance, is name, not title, right? So
Mhm.
we need to restore that. I don't think there's that many places where it got removed, but that also got removed.
That's a really good point. You're right. Because the label method here wouldn't be useful if it didn't also know the
The key.
label key.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man.
I like that though more than adding, well, I mean, I guess either one, like a label callback. What's the downside of a label callback? I would much rather have a module like switch out the label callback than the entire class, for example. Um,
Well, the nice thing about this way of doing it at the entity level, right, could mean that um, if you did allow a label callback, you could set it on entity instead of node. So we wouldn't have to implement it for every single entity type for entity translation, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, if we had entity key or if we had that label key, then yeah, inside of the node class,
callback.
we would just remove the label method entirely because
We would
it,
use title as the key.
yeah, the title would be specified as the key in the base class of entity, and so you wouldn't need this because it would be using the base class's label. And inside of the label method, that's where it would be both checking for is there a label callback and what's the entity key.
So
And
you're saying we do both there rather than
yeah, because
have that be alterable.
yeah, because title module or entity translate needs to be able to swap out what the label callback is. And so it
I
needs,
do think it would be valuable to like only affect nodes though.
yeah, you could, because in hook entity info, you'd change the label callback just for nodes.
Even if node didn't have its own label callback, you could still do that. If it
Yeah, so we wouldn't
callback
need a
identity.
core wouldn't need a label callback for anything, for any classes, because it would use the method label, but it would say if there is a label callback, call it.
Okay,
Because it would need the key, the label key still, in order
yeah.
to check which property it should pull from, and it would just return that, just like this
Well,
is, where
I
it's saying
like
this
this approach
title.
a lot more than making entities, the classes swappable.
Well, I'm not. The thing about this issue is that I think that this is a good change, because I do think that
What? You just said
what
you thought it wasn't a good change.
no, well, I think like coding wise, like it makes a lot of sense, like that we are reading out, like we have it specified somewhere, and and it seems like it should be using it instead of using the direct constructors. I don't like what could come from it. You know, does that make sense?
No.
Uh,
RG Piano will be so happy though.
Yeah, but then he'll
No, no, but
create the exact thing that Nate's afraid of because
no,
he's so
but
capable.
people are not like how many times are people actually going to swap out the node class? It's extreme, right?
If it
I
happens in
mean,
Entity Plus, it'll happen like 98% of the time because people they won't
but
want it,
Entity
but they'll want
Plus,
something else Entity Plus needs and they'll get it anyway.
yeah, but I mean, I think we should get rid of Entity Plus for Backdrop 2.0.
I
oh
mean,
yeah,
we're working
totally.
on it. Yeah.
Entity Plus needs to go bye-bye. It's ruined
Yeah.
uh, many developers'
I do
hours.
think though the great thing about Entity Plus is that it's revealing places in core where we didn't have another
That's true.
solution.
Yeah.
So it is a helpful tool. But yeah, I agree. It would be nice if we could fix all the problems. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I think this issue, the removing the direct use of node I think it's the correct thing to do if you're gonna put in hook entity info that there's an entity class, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
the right thing to do, even
Yeah.
if people might abuse it.
This is I did say that there was some, there's a good benefit to using entity create already. Like what I'd been doing previously is, if I knew I was working with nodes, or I only dealt with nodes, then I would use the class instantiate or class constructor directly to instantiate the object. But if I was working with a generic entity, system that affected all entities, that's when I would use the entity create function, because then I didn't want to have to check to see what class I was dealing with. So there
Isn't
was
there
a benefit.
also
What's
like
that?
a IDE benefit where if you use node, your IDE will know how to follow it, but if you use entity create, it's like don't know. Isn't there like a
Yeah, well, yeah, just generally, like using an IDE, it's much easier to track up and down like where code is coming from if you're just directly calling the classes. Because when you call entity create and it has to go look up from hook entity info and then translate a string to a class name, an IDE can't follow that logic. And so that's one of the updates and feedback that we had in this, is that this goes through and adds uh,
Hmm,
variable hints to everywhere that we do this, to say what
nice.
gets returned from entity create. It's going to be a file object, and in VS Code and in PHP Storm and probably others. That makes it so that when you're working with file later, it knows that that's a file object and it'll link you over to the file code.
Can you not do new entity because it's abstract? Instead of calling entity create
Oh, yeah. Like a new entity with capital E.
object? Yeah,
No, it won't allow that because it needs to be extended because it doesn't have all the methods that are in the interface. Yeah, so there is no ability to create a generic entity. It has to be of a subtype or of
yeah.
a
I like the type hinting. That's nice.
yeah. We were already doing this in a lot of places in core. This is we've had a lot of nice benefits from this conversation. That here we go. So so we weren't being consistent. This one's R2BC. And that in a lot of places we were doing this where we had a class and we were only using like 1 star here, and it needs to be 2 for VS Code to pick it up. And so that was a nice find that
Wild.
we're just being consistent here. Yeah, this is kind of my fault because I was on adding most of these whenever I could, and I
Yeah,
didn't
you
know that
wouldn't know. How would
I
you
used
know?
PHP Storm and I had no idea that 2 stars would be required. Okay. Yeah, there's any other feedback on I really don't still quite know what to do with this one. I haven't been fully convinced. I think what I've been missing and I hope that I haven't that hasn't been said and I just missed it is uh why? Like why do we need this in the first place? Like is it just for code cleanliness that's the way it should be? You know, I think the idea is that, you know, RGPiano has some reason he wants to swap out the class. And yeah,
You want to fix that problem instead, or maybe in addition to this.
yeah, like what is the reason and can we fix that problem, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't think it's just principle?
Well, that's the thing. Like Backdrop doesn't do things for no reason, right? That's how Drupal ended up where Drupal is. They did things because it was better.
Right, but
Right?
what's the point of putting a class in hook entity info then? If you
It
can't
is
override it, right?
well, yeah, because you can't. It's hook entity info serves a lot of purpose to create that class map. But the question is like, why do we have hook entity info alter? You know, so
Yeah,
that
that I
the
think is the
map
big
is
question.
helpful. The
Yeah.
alter hook makes it look like you can change something that you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the better question is like, okay, let's do this and remove the alter hook. And then what?
No, but you need the hook entity info alter because that's where, for instance, my module would add the label callback.
Yeah. There's other stuff in hook entity info alter that can be swapped
So,
out, just
okay,
not the class.
is there a way that we can change the or just info alter hooks in general to indicate things that can and can't be changed?
So
That
that
would make it
I
clearer
also
to contrib.
yeah, I also think that might be kind of an okay like compromise here is we put in the documentation like, you know, for hook entity info alter, you know, some keys, you know, changing some values may cause dramatic breaks and stuff like that, including the entity class, right?
Or we just make it so that you can't change that, right? So you call the alter hook and then you like say, actually, this is the class. And it doesn't matter what you changed it, we just set it back to what it's supposed to be. And then that you'd have some information, maybe like a watchdog message that like prints something in the log that's like X module is attempting to override the node class. This isn't allowed and links you to some documentation page or something like that.
And I gotta
We
say, I'm a
wanted to
little bit on
enforce that.
RGPiano. I'm a little bit on RGPiano's side on this one. Like, even if you shouldn't do something, as a developer, I don't like it being taken away from me.
Yeah,
But as an
I'm
end
also kind
user,
of a, I'm
you would
also,
definitely prefer your site not to be entirely broken because you installed a module and didn't know any better. Like, we don't really care about what the developers want in Backdrop. We care about what it's like to use the product. And so I think we need to sort of keep that in balance where like all these people in these conversations are developers, and we need to sort of think about what it feels like to be the people that are stuck using the product and don't understand why any of this matters.
yeah. Yeah, I'm also okay, like, to follow up with what Ben's saying. Yeah, I'm also okay with, like, if you're a developer and you're running your website, if you want to do something that's a bad idea in your custom code, then, go for it. Or what I consider to be a bad idea, maybe.
I do lots of things that are bad ideas, so.
You know, but if you're doing the same thing, and you maintain lots of websites and you're doing the same thing on a lot of projects, then the very next step is to create a contrib module that takes your possibly bad idea and puts it into contrib. And then pretty soon there's lots of sites that are all built on
Bad ideas.
a bad idea. Yeah.
I mean, we do have like,
This is really offensive. That we shouldn't be calling this a bad idea
I mean, this is
because
all theoretical too, right? Like, we don't even know if there's like a use case for the bad idea in the first place. So
yeah. Well, I think
Well, I think we should
only one
ask it.
only one
should ask
module
him.
gets to override the class, I think is a pretty definitive, like this could cause a lot of problems. So yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we do see that anyway. Like, if you override the title callback and then some other module overrides the title callback and then some other module, like we see this all the time. If you have like translation and auto node title, like it's a mess. However, you want both those things together. So yeah, I don't know. This happens already. We're not like
Yeah, bad things
creating new
definitely
problems.
happen.
Yeah.
You are muted, Nate. Do you know that?
I'm sorry. I was just recapping everything and none of it got captured. Yeah. Okay, so we have a solution, we think, for the label. We restore an entity key, or sorry, label key, and we restore label callback. And then we make the label method inside of the entity class, check the label key and return it. And we also check to see if the label callback exists, and if it does, then call that, and that allows it to be swapped. And that both preserves the more object-oriented mechanism of, like, there's a method for label, so you don't have to call entity label all over the place. And it also allows it to be swapped, and it's more compatibility with 777. All of these things are good.
Yeah. And it allows us to kick the other decision down the road a little farther, so that if we want to ask what the use case is for the swapping, we can. But it also allows us to make that change too. And then
Okay. Yeah, we do have entity label as a function, but yeah, it just does this now, which is perfect. We do this quite a bit too. This is both compatibility with 777 and also just developer friendliness, that sometimes when there's a method on an object, there's also just the functional equivalent of it. Yeah. Okay. What was the other problem that you mentioned, Ben?
The other one is the removal of entity underscore language and not using that in various places. Yeah.
So I think we might already have an issue for this.
Oh, okay.
I think I ran into this really early in using Backdrop with the porting stuff from Drupal 7 and not having the same ability. Let me go see. I don't think it's might not be specific.
Okay, so there used to be a function called entity language.
Yeah, and it was actually in a core include. I mean, it wasn't even in like the entity module. It was called by core in a bunch of places. And there was a language callback that you could set also in hook entity info, I think.
Mhm.
And which would then let you override the language code in various, places.
So it probably means that we'll do the same thing.
Yeah,
Where we'll introduce a new method, either called language or possibly lang code. Unfortunately the lang code language thing is that ship sailed long, long ago. That language got renamed to lang code.
yeah.
And so the method may end up being called lang code instead of
Yeah, I think it's good to call it lang code. I have been struggling a little bit to understand what that change was, but my understanding is language is an object that has various properties on it, and lang code is just the code of the
the
two-letter
string.
code of the
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's why the change was made, to disambiguate those two. But it was such a disruptive change that when we first started Backdrop, had that change not been made already, we wouldn't have adopted it.
I
But
think
yeah,
the issue is called add backwards compatible support for entity language.
Can you pop a link in that in the chat here? I'll add that to my GitHub issue too.
you just
It's gonna be old. There we go. Wait, it's the DXBC down one from your cursor. I think. Oh, we have this is about a property. We have a larger issue about how to do backwards compatible properties. This might not be what I was thinking of.
yeah. Yeah, there's this was also came up in our discussion a little bit here in the Zulip thread. That we could quote solve a lot of problems if we used PHP's magic methods to like swap stuff around when things don't exist.
No, thank you.
Zoom. All right, sorry, my screen just turned off and back on and everything went away. Do I have sound now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, but magic methods just cause all kinds of problems where it's really difficult to debug and trace and to see where stuff is.
Oh. Might be more than just his screen.
Yeah, he's gone again.
Which GitHub issue number was that? The one you were talking about, Jen?
Good question.
This might keep happening when when my monitor starts acting up.
No, I can't find it either. Here we go. It is issue number 3621. I'm gonna drop it in the weekly meeting Zulip thread.
All right, sorry about my hardware problems. All right. Well, I want to see if there's anything else. I think we generally have some ideas to move stuff forward here for entity language and or for the label callback definitely, and the language or lang code callback we'll need to kind of discuss further. But I think we'll probably pursue the same approach for both of them.
Can I open a different ticket for that?
Mhm.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
good. Ben, what's your timeline looking like? The thing about this is that could take a while to implement. I mean, this could lead right into the next topic, which is feature freeze, which is the end of this month. That'd be a pretty quick turnaround, to get this sorted out in a couple of weeks. It's possible. And that would probably alleviate any timeline concerns for you.
We don't have a time crunch on this. This site is not going to launch for probably until August or September.
So
And
the
even
pre-
then we could put a patch in until it goes in. So it's just and we probably won't release entity language before then because I'm a little nervous that it'll break things on people's sites. Although they would have to probably migrate stuff anyway. So anyway, not a big time crunch, let's put it that way.
Hey, Ben, I would also check up issue 185. That might be closer to what you're looking for. It's an oldie.
Can you put those links in the chat? Because they're not.
Yeah, they're both
Okay.
in the
Okay.
Zulip chat. You want
Oh,
in the
Zulip.
chat?
Oh,
Here,
okay.
I'll
I'm looking at
put
the
the
wrong
link in the
chat.
I've got all the chats. Hold on, I'll put it in both places. Copy. There we go.
Okay. Let's see. Those are the main topics that we had to discuss for today. Yeah, like I mentioned, feature freeze is coming up in a couple of weeks. Tentatively, that will be May 1st. As it gets closer, we may push that to May 2nd, which is a Friday, because May 1st is a holiday in most of the world. It's Labor Day, and our policy is to have feature freeze not be on a holiday, not be on a weekend. It pushes to the next working day. Even though that only gets us one day in this case, that will probably be the case. And yeah, anybody else, other topics? We've just got a couple minutes before we close.
I can show off that module I was talking
Oh
about.
yeah, I want to see that.
Okay, so we have this. So wait, hold on. Let me share my. Can I share my screen on here? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Mhm.
Okay, so we have a site. It's called My Shakespeare. We think it's actually one of the biggest, if not the biggest, website running Backdrop right now. We've got this running on a Kubernetes setup, and it's got 10. I think they're like equivalent to M4 larges in AWS, so big servers handling all the requests, like millions of requests to this website. And but that's not the point. We're going to do a write-up about this. I wrote a module that basically allows you to seamlessly move media YouTube or media Vimeo fields from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. And as a part of that, I did a video browser that allows you to browse video entities. Oops. Oh, unfortunately, of course, the icons aren't showing up. These do show with nice icons. But this thing lets you select a video. And it gets attached with the thumbnail and everything. And so anybody that has media Vimeo or media YouTube on their Drupal site, it lets you handle those seamlessly in a Backdrop site. So it's pretty cool.
Is this what is it? Embed video embed module or?
It
what
is not, well, for Backdrop, it's a new module called file remote video. So it treats files as a YouTube and Vimeo files
it
as a remote
A new,
file.
a new bundle type for file entities or,
It's not, it might be a bundle, I'm not sure.
or?
I have to go look at it.
Existing field or does it provide a new field type?
It's not a new field type, it's a regular file field. And it has a
File.
file MIME. It has a file MIME of media / YouTube or media / Vimeo.
Wow,
It's pretty
that's
cool.
neat.
What I don't have anything to insert these into CK editor, but maybe I don't need that actually. Because maybe there's already like an embed thing that lets you do that.
Yeah, it's still pretty great. So that view that you looked at when you clicked replace video or
Yeah.
select video, this is just a view of files
So this
filtered.
is just a view of files. I don't know why the icons aren't showing up, but
Oh, actually, it still says select from image library. That's interesting.
oh yeah, I stole some of this code from the image library.
Okay.
That's a bug.
I thought it was literally the same code, but it's just copy.
No, I actually had to write a bunch of stuff to get this all working. It's a little bit different than the image stuff because all the image stuff has a lot of extra file stuff that I didn't.
Yeah, the properties, alt text, and
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah. Very cool.
So anyway, I think we'll probably release that at some point once I get a chance to clean it up a little.
That's cool.
So that should be good for people moving from. I mean, I know we have multiple clients that had those modules installed in 777, so it should be good if other people migrate from the
They were
media
using
module
media
using those types of
in 777.
videos. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's been a little hole, well, kind of a big hole in the Backdrop handling of generic media, right? Like I really like that we avoided the abstraction of a media entity and a file entity. That just causes an endless amount of confusion in Drupal land. But it does mean that the file managed table and just the file table and specifically wasn't really set up to handle remote stuff. It's more really about locally managed files rather than remote ones. But as that gets developed, I wouldn't be opposed to making that table more friendly towards remote assets, because this example of video is like it almost has to be remote. Like nobody's doing locally hosted videos just because the encoding in all of the different formats is way too tedious to do locally. And so almost all videos are hosted by services.
Yeah, the cool
So
thing about this is it's using, I think, almost all Backdrop core stuff. Maybe I had to use Entity Plus in there. I'm not sure.
yeah, very cool.
But it's just a Backdrop core file, file instance.
It's great. Okay, well let's wrap up for today. Anybody else last comments before we turn off the recording? Okay. All right, well thank you everybody for the discussion. Thank you for being here. We will continue being heads down the next couple of weeks as we speed towards feature freeze. Next week we'll probably put more of a focus on what we can possibly get done, the feasibility of features for the 131 release. So stay tuned for next week.
It is only 3 weeks away and we don't have very much in the pipeline, do we?
No, we have almost certainly, well, we updated CK Editor, and so the emoji plugin is almost certainly going to happen. We did, PHP 8.4 support, so there's that as well. But yeah, other things,
That big one from last time was an alternate paths for layouts. Is that doable?
yeah, that's doable.
Mhm.
You know, we were hours away from getting it in last time, I think. So I think but it's dependent upon
Mhm.
our advocate for it, Herb Duell, coming back and showing an interest in it, I think.
Right. Okay.
Okay, well, let's close for today. Thanks again. See you next week.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Amy.